Our next speaker is Mr. Tom Massey, who is the maintenance manager at Nucor Steel. Come on up, Tom.
All right, you guys help me adjust this volume. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. First, let me thank ARC for having us and inviting us here. This is my first ARC conference, and I can tell you in the last 2 days, I can see the benefit of us, Nucor, becoming more involved with the ARC group and the people that are attending these conferences. You know, what becomes apparent to a lot of us as we go through these conferences, thank you, is that our specific products may be different, but a lot of the challenges are the same. And, you know, that's really the benefit of us coming here together. And in a way, while we're benefiting our individual interest, really we're moving manufacturing and process and business ahead for the whole country. You know, manufacturing has taken a slump. You know, that's part of where our workforce challenges are coming from. It hasn't been the focus for the last 10 to 15 years. And some of the struggles that we're having are coming from that. So anything that we can do together to further the manufacturing and these processes and understanding and the business drivers of this, then we're helping everyone out. Just a little Nucor Steel overview here. Nucor Steel is the largest steel and steel products producer in the United States, and we are vertically integrated from the scrap side or raw material side of our business. And pretty much anything that you see that has steel in it, we probably make it or have something to do with it. We have a very broad range of products. We're one of the world's foremost steel recyclers. Obviously, steel weighs a lot. So we use almost, it's probably around 85 to 90% of the steel that we use is recycled steel. So by tonnage, since it's so heavy, that puts us up there a little ways. We're very proud of that. There's 21,000 plus team members today in Nucor and our subsidiaries, and 50 plus divisions, including the upstream and downstream companies. And what my presentation today is going to be over, we've heard it over the last 2 days, and we heard it today, and I'm going to really hit that point, and that is the cultural side of our business and tapping into our people and having them help us in all these challenges, and really a paradigm change from a worker on the floor to a business team member on the floor. So all those touchy-feely things we're going to talk about for the next 15 minutes, okay? And I work around a bunch of steel mill workers, and I'll tell you, they'll take exception to the touchy-feely thing. They're probably the least touchy-feely people I know. But at the end of the day, that's one of the paradigms that we've got to get over, because actually culture's there whether we admit it or not. Okay. Talk a little bit about the project that I've been involved with there at Jewett for the last 10 years. One is, as we came into 2001, Nucor had been around, and the mill at Jewett had been around for 25 years at that time. And there was really becoming a true focus on safety. Before, we talked about safety, but just at my division back in 96, 97, 98, we're still having 40 to 45 recordables a year. That's 45 people a year, basically one every 3 or 4 days, that went home injured. And we realized that that is not living up to the mantra of putting our first asset first. So there was a real focus. Our new CEO, Dan D'Amico, came in, and he had worked up through being a metallurgist on the floor and really set this out in front of us as a true challenge. And basically he told us, we're not going to put this on there at the beginning of our mission statement and then forget about it. So we had those challenges coming. Also, during the last 10 years, with the opportunities of coming out of the slight recession in the steel industry in 2001, 2002, and around 9/11, we grew the company. When I entered in 2000, there were only 4,500 employees, and today there's 21,000. So for us, pretty substantial growth over that time. The majority of that took place between 2002 and 2007. We went from 20 divisions to 50 plus divisions, and we were experiencing, like a lot of us are, were disappearing competitive advantages. Nucor is credited with really modernizing and revolutionizing the steel industry with the mini mill concept. Started in the late 60s and through the 70s and 80s. And some of the competitive advantages that we had back then, and our founder Ken Iverson really tapped into these. One is we've had incentive-based employee policies from the very beginning. So tapping into those people on the floor, that they are owners of the company and they're directly bought into the results of the company. The other thing, in the little town that I'm from, Jewett, Texas, someone was asking me today, well, how many people are there? And I said, well, or what's the population? If you count the cows and the dogs, it's about 600. Okay, it's very small. And the joke used to be that Ken Iverson, the way he picked the 4 first steel mill locations, was he went to areas that had railroads, highways, and then he'd find a place where there were railroads and highways close together, and he'd drive till he'd lose radio reception. And then he'd say, okay, we're going to put the mill here. And the reason he did that was he was looking for the type of people that came off the farms, the people with the blue-collar work ethic, people that didn't have a lot of resources but just had to make things happen. And that was a large competitive advantage for us for years. The mini mill, obviously, that technology and actually championing that was a big competitive advantage. But, you know, around 2000, I started realizing with the globalization of business and the way transportation and technology all came along, rural areas, in fact, today is a disadvantage of attracting skilled workers. It's not an advantage anymore. There are a lot of people that have went into the mini mill business nowadays. That's not an advantage for us anymore. So we saw these competitive advantages going away. We saw the changing market requirements coming. And there at Texas, they had just put together about 2 years, so in '98, a 10-year capital investment plan for that facility to modernize the facility and move us ahead. So looking at these challenges here, the leadership group at that time, there were some big things that are going to take place. One is because we don't have a lot of turnover rate or hadn't had, we had an aging workforce back then. People go to Nucor and work for 35 and 40 years. A lot of them go to work for 35 or 40 years. So there's definitely going to be some change management have to take place. We also knew with this modernization, the technology, even though with a mini mill and those things, we had revolutionized that 30 years prior, the new technology and automation and controls, we were behind and we were going to make a big leap. And there was going to be a difference needed in that skill in the workforce. So as they looked at together and put this together, one of the things that they noticed is we are an asset-intensive business. You know, the facilities and grounds out there with these improvements is around $340 million. And they realized that, hey, we're going to have to take a look at how we look at maintenance and how we're performing and basically managing those assets. Now again, Nucor, we're known for our culture, and it's something that's been talked about for a long time. You can read about it in the book Good to Great, and Ken Iverson's book that he put out in 2001. But the way that we went about it, and that's the thing I guess I'm going to propose this morning, is I think what we've tapped into is a way to further both interests at the same time. And that is growing your team and getting your team members more involved and getting them to make this transition to business team members and advancing those business results that we needed. And that's what the team back then was looking at. How do we do that? How can we do both at the same time? So obviously, from an EAM standpoint, back in that time, we were very reactive. The maintenance department I came in as a shift electrician in 2000, we were very reactive focused. We fixed it when it was broke. We had a little standalone work order system that we really just used as a work list. There was no tie between that and inventory and purchasing. So all of that was not connected. But we started thinking about what is the vision that's going to lead us down this road. And I'll tell you that today, 10 years later, we haven't realized the vision that we saw back in 2002. And I think that's been part of the success is because we challenged ourselves not to just implement something around what we were doing today, but what should it look like? What could it look like? And we let that drive our requirements from a software standpoint, from process redefinement standpoint, and then we challenged the team with making that journey. So really the last 8 years, 10 years, that's what the team there has been doing. We did team up with IFS, and we did implement a CMMS system that the scope of that at that time was purchasing, inventory, and work orders, project management. And we started implementing those new process definitions that the team had come up with and had laid out. And one thing to note, over this journey, we knew as we laid those out in 2002, we knew that we weren't going to get there tomorrow. We understood that. We knew it was going to be a journey, not with a quick destination, and that this was going to happen over time. And that's kind of the mindset that we went into it, and again, we've continued to challenge the team with that. When you talk about culture and this touchy-feely thing, we'll see if this makes any sense, and I can't take credit. This actually comes from some of the Covey and 7 Habits and principal leadership work that he was done. But if you look at it, if we look at our present performance there by the orange line, and the drivers that we want for our business, right? Safety, quality, cost, reliability, all of those drivers, the tendency of us as leaders is to do what? Push real hard, right? Step on the accelerator and push real hard and just try to drive them. And there's no doubt that you can drive some results from that. But there's all those other things that's wrapped up in that culture that a lot of times push against that. And you can go down there and see those. Communication or lack thereof, process knowledge, poor direction or modeling, politicking or rivalries, obscure expectations. So you can kind of see all those things that lay out there in the culture that is what pushes against the driving forces. The take we did is that, through our mission statement and through the values of the company and through the SOPs that we had, really and truly, this is established, and no one will argue that these drivers should be the drivers. No one will argue that. So what we decided to do is, instead of going at it from that standpoint, let's get on the other side of this, and let's work at removing these obstacles. And a lot of that lies within the attitudes of the team, the silos between departments, and work on removing those, because naturally everybody wants the performance to go up. But it's focusing on removing the obstacles back there in that culture and in the teamwork to make that an easier transition. We kind of look at it this way. As we set forth here, we really had 2 projects. One was to deliver more business results, and the other one, as you can see, was to grow and develop our team in such a way that that push would continue and the team would take on that challenge of continuing to provide those better returns in the face of these changing market conditions. That's easier said than done, as I'm sure all of you guys know. There were some big paradigms within our facility and within Nucor as a corporation that were working against us. One of them was, up until 2001, as long as we could put steel out the door, we were going to make money. Just pure and simple. Our incentive programs were based around it, and it was tons, tons, tons. That production at all costs we saw earlier. People and processes and silos. Maintenance department, you guys just worry about your department, worry about getting things fixed. Production department, you worry about running the mill. Accounting, you make sure that all the controls are in place and that we got the right reports out. Maintenance is a function or necessary evil, and this is something that we had a conversation earlier at lunch that I'm glad to see that on a wide scale looks like this is changing. In asset-intensive business models, maintenance or asset management is a core business process. Really the only question is, are you going to recognize it as that or not? But it is a core business process. And in that reactive culture, our people had been praised, incentivized, promoted for how well they reacted for years, for 30 years. So that was a big paradigm that was going to have to change. We're still working on that today, 8 years later, as a matter of fact. Part of this was we really wanted to get the team, so we lined up this project. Hey, we need to deliver better business results. We need to do a better job of asset management. Knowing all along that what we really want to do was grow the team and all these ideas and change these paradigms and get them to take more ownership in doing that. And one of the ways that we did this was we really got them focused on the processes. redefine the processes. One of the first things that came up was software. Well, let's get some new software because the one we got don't work. Well, it was never implemented. It was bought and turned on. There was never any effort to put it together. The blame was on the software. And we knew that if we just jumped straight to software, we'd probably wind up in the same place. So a remedy to that was really focusing the team and asking them, hey, this is a great opportunity to not buy something and automate what we're doing today, but let's look out at what do these processes, what could they look like, should they look like, and we really drove this home. Now, what you see is our latest kind of planning and scheduling of a work order, and for you guys and gals that have been in this, it doesn't look too much different than what you're going to see anywhere. The whole point was, though, is that we didn't go tell the team, hey, here's what you're going to use. We threw out there, go check and see best practices and those kinds of things and make it your own and come to it. And over a period of time, basically what they came up with matched what best practice and flow was out there. It's got their own little twist, but the idea is they own it. We didn't get it out of a book and give it to them, they own it. So we really use that process focus and drive, and that's part of the educational process we saw too, from them becoming just a maintenance team member to a business team member, is they understand more about the bigger picture processes. They understand more than just grab my tool bag and go replace the proc switch. As we did that, again, trying to attack those silos, the structure we used was cross-functional teams. We've seen that in several presentations. So nothing big and new here, but using those and getting those guys focused, and again, this purpose behind this was to start having them address these under behind the scenes cultural issues of communication, of undue competitive nature and those different things, and getting them to focus on the processes, and then going through and holding them accountable for implementing these best practices or these new processes and driving the business results. In other words, we made sure right up front that we talked about that we're not doing this project just to do it. At the end of the day, you have to deliver business results. Through our project in Jewett, this phase one would be, I'll say, the first 2 years of from the time that we decided to have a focused effort until we had went through process redesign and selected a software and implemented it. So within about 18 months after implementation, we had a $3 million reduction in maintenance cost, $1 million reduction in inventory. That next one, greater than 95% capture of maintenance time to equipment. In our model, half of what goes through the maintenance department every year is payroll. And before, we didn't capture that in any way. We paid our guys, but we didn't capture exactly where that's going. Well, in that model, if I wasn't going to capture where their time's going to equipment, to the assets, basically what I was saying is $10 million a year, I'm not going to track. And that didn't make sense. That was a big hurdle because in Nucor, we don't punch time cards. And that was a big one for us because now people, they assume that was the big brother. That was a big hurdle to get over. But it was very important to get them to understand that's $10 million in your time. Where you're spending your time tells us a lot about what's good, what's bad, where we need to improve. The second phase was the next 2 years, and we got the system in, got over the learning curve of the new system and some of the new processes and got them in place. And the next thing was we challenged the team with, okay, we went through and we've redesigned these processes and we put that in front of us. We got a new software tool. We've got over the learning curve. Now what are we going to do with all this data that we got? So what we challenged them with was a team in each one of these units to go out and look at the data and say, where does it tell us to go work at? And again, it started out, the team, even though we told them it's not, they went down a maintenance path. But if you can see, other than the first one, really and truly, like the yield improvement, that started out looking at maintenance downtime, and pretty quickly that led into a yield process improvement, which stretched across all 3 units. So you can see, I mean, in the first couple of years, we basically paid for the investment we had made there locally at Jewett by about 3 times over. Lessons learned, culture is a strong force, and it's there whether you acknowledge it or not. And it's either working for you or against you. This is one of those things is there really is no middle of the road fence. Cross-functional teams help to break down those organizational silos. Anytime we can get people working together and give them common deliverables, it helps to break those things down. We talked about in a physical asset intensive business model, maintenance, asset management, it is a core business process. Software is an important tool, but it must be leveraged properly, and the greater gains come from using that to grow that culture and that process knowledge and performance. And then the last one is, nothing's more challenging than success. We've had our slides back and forth. We've had some turnover rate, and what we're learning is if we don't do a good job of going back through these early steps, you start to lose ground. It's a never-ending battle to keep this out in front and to keep driving that culture and those processes. I think that's it.